Get that piece of junk out of here, old man. A bar patron shouted. The veteran didn't respond, just kept working on his bicycle chain. Less than 10 minutes later, the thunderous roar of Harley engines filled the air, converging from all directions, lining the entire street. What transformed contempt into overwhelming respect? Welcome to QH, let's uncover what really happened. Clayton Briggs adjusted his faded Marine Corps cap as he pedaled his old bicycle through the small town of North Haven. At 71, his weathered face told stories his lips rarely shared, years in Vietnam that had taken more from him than just his youth. His once powerful frame remained lean but diminished, back slightly stooped from age and memories too heavy to stand fully upright beneath. The bicycle, a 30-year-old Schwinn with more rust than paint, wasn't his preference, but necessity. After his third heart attack, doctors had revoked his license. Too proud to ask for rides and too independent to stay home, Clayton had pulled the old bike from his garage and made it his daily companion. Today's journey was his monthly trek to the VA clinic 6 miles outside town. The doctors monitored his heart, adjusted his medications, and pretended not to notice when he downplayed his pain. Clayton never complained. He'd seen too many good men die in the mud of Southeast Asia to waste breath bemoaning his own discomfort. What few people in North Haven knew was that Staff Sergeant Clayton Jenkins had once saved 5 men from certain death. During an ambush near Da Nang in 1969, he'd carried wounded comrades through enemy fire, returning again and again until everyone was safe. The paperwork for his Silver Star had been lost in the chaos of war, and Clayton had never pursued recognition. Just doing what needed doing, he'd say on the rare occasion someone asked about his service. The afternoon sun beat down as Clayton pedaled past Main Street's small businesses. His breath came harder than he liked to admit, but the clinic appointment couldn't be missed. His route took him past the Thunder Road Tavern, a popular gathering spot for motorcycle enthusiasts from 3 counties. The weekend crowd was already forming, leather-clad riders lounging outside, bikes gleaming in the sunlight. Just as Clayton passed the bar's entrance, he felt his bicycle lurch beneath him. The chain, already stretched and worn, had finally snapped. The sudden stop nearly toppled him, but he caught himself and dismounted with as much dignity as his aching joints allowed. Kneeling beside his bicycle, Clayton assessed the damage. The chain had broken cleanly, fixable, but messy work. He reached into his small tool pouch, extracting a chain tool and rag. His gnarled fingers, still strong despite their arthritis, began the familiar repair. "Hey, you can't park that piece of garbage here," a voice called from the bar entrance. A heavy-set man in his 30s, wearing a leather vest over a stained t-shirt, glared at Clayton. "This ain't a repair shop for trash bikes." Clayton didn't look up, just continued working. "Won't take but a minute, sir. Chain broke." "I don't care," the whole damn thing exploded. "Move it somewhere else," the man's voice carried, drawing attention from others at the bar. A small crowd formed, watching the confrontation with amused interest. "Let the fossil figure it out," someone called, prompting laughter. Another voice, "Probably can't afford a car, pathetic." Clayton felt their eyes on him, the mockery, the dismissal. He'd faced worse, of course. Far worse, but something about public humiliation still stung, even after all these years. For a moment, he considered abandoning the repair, dragging his bicycle down the street, away from the jeers. Instead, he simply continued working, fingers steady despite the audience. There was dignity and silence in doing what needed to be done, regardless of who approved. It was a lesson he'd learned in war, and carried through peace. "When everyone turns away, only conscience remains," his father had once told him. Clayton held the thought close as he worked on his broken chain, ignoring the growing laughter behind him. Stay with us to see what happens next to Clayton. As Clayton worked on his bicycle chain, grease blackening his weathered hands, the crowd at the Thunder Road bar continued their mockery. Most were weekend riders, professionals who donned leather on Saturdays and returned to office jobs on Monday. They wore patches and logos, purchased rather than earned, playing at an outlaw lifestyle from the safety of prosperity. What they failed to notice was the particular cap Clayton wore, faded olive drab with the Marine Corps emblem, worn not as fashion but as identity. They missed the small purple heart pin affixed to its side. They didn't recognize the quiet dignity in his posture, even kneeling on dirty pavement. One man, however, saw more. Seated slightly apart from the others, was Michael Master Gunnery Sergeant Hayes, a 58-year-old former Marine gunnery sergeant, who'd served in Desert Storm. His trained eye caught details others overlooked. The military bearing that never truly leaves a Marine, the particular way Clayton organized his simple tools, the flash of a tattoo on his forearm when his sleeve pulled back. As Clayton rolled up his cuff to keep it from the chain grease, Hayes caught sight of a distinctive emblem, the Force Recon insignia, faded with age, but unmistakable to those who knew. Force Reconnaissance, the Marines' elite special operations unit, was not something a person claimed lightly. Hayes pulled out his phone, typing quickly before sliding it back into his pocket. His eyes never left Clayton, even as he reached for his beer. The harassment intensified. A younger rider, emboldened by alcohol and his friends' laughter, sauntered over to where Clayton worked. "Hey, Grandpa, you're bringing down property values," he called, gesturing to the expensive motorcycles lined up outside. "This is a place for real rides, not kiddie toys." Clayton didn't respond, just wiped his hands on the small rag he carried. "You hear me, old man? Or are your hearing aids broken too?" A few patrons laughed, but others began to look uncomfortable. Making fun of an old man fixing a bicycle had stopped being amusing and started feeling mean-spirited. A woman sitting at an outdoor table whispered to her companion, "Someone should help him instead of being jerks." Her friend shrugged, "Not our problem. He shouldn't have stopped here." A young boy, perhaps 9 or 10, watching from the sidewalk with his father, tugged at his dad's sleeve. "Why are they being so mean to that old man?" The father, uncomfortable but unwilling to intervene, merely replied, "Sometimes people have bad days, son, but he's not anything wrong," the boy persisted. "Let's go," his father said, steering him away. "It's none of our business." Clayton felt each barb, each laugh, but his expression revealed nothing. He'd endured far worse than mockery. Still, as he worked on the stubborn chain, memories surfaced unbidden, of comrades who never grew old, of welcome home parades that never materialized, of a nation that had largely forgotten its promises to those who served. Inside the bar, Gunny Thompson watched through the window, his phone buzzing with incoming messages. He read them, nodded once to himself, and slipped outside. Walking to his motorcycle, he made a brief call. "This is Gunny, we've got a brother in need at the Thunder Road, Vietnam era. Force Recon by the look of him. Some disrespect happening." He listened briefly. "Roger that, I'll stand by." He returned to his seat, signaling for another drink. To a casual observer, nothing had changed, but Gunny's eyes now held purpose, watching the scene with calculated patience. Clayton had nearly completed his repair when the door to the bar swung open again. The first heckler emerged, now flanked by two friends. Liquid courage had transformed his disdain into aggression. "Time's up, old-timer," he announced, approaching Clayton's bicycle. "We've got real customers trying to enjoy themselves." With deliberate disrespect, he placed his boot on Clayton's front tire, applying pressure. "Maybe you didn't hear me before." Clayton looked up then, making direct eye contact for the first time. His gaze wasn't angry or pleading, just steady, assessing the look of a man who had seen true threats, and wasn't impressed by pretenders. Something in that gaze made the heckler falter momentarily, but liquid courage pushed him forward. "You deaf or just stupid? Move this junk before I move it for you." A few patrons shifted uncomfortably. The confrontation had crossed a line from mockery to threat, and the old man's dignity made the aggression feel even more unwarranted. Clayton slowly rose to his feet, movements deliberate but fluid, despite his age. He didn't speak, just stood facing his harasser, with quiet composure. For a moment, the tableau held, an old man in simple clothes, facing a larger, younger adversary, backed by friends and alcohol. Then, with practiced efficiency, Clayton knelt again and finished securing his chain. Without a word, he began to wheel his bicycle away from the bar, his back straight despite the humiliation. "That's right, keep moving," the heckler called after him, voice carrying down the street, "and don't come back." Rain clouds had gathered during the confrontation, and as Clayton pushed his bicycle along the sidewalk, the first drops began to fall. Within moments, the sprinkle became a steady shower, soaking through his thin jacket. Still, he didn't hurry, maintaining the same dignified pace as the water plastered his white hair to his forehead. Clayton had managed about a block's distance when the rain intensified. His arthritis flared in the damp, making each step more painful than the last. Still, he persevered, pushing his bicycle along the glistening sidewalk. The VA clinic was still 5 miles away, and he'd miss his appointment at this rate, but dignity demanded he put distance between himself and the mockery at the Iron Horse. A car passed, splashing through a puddle and drenching his legs. The young driver and passengers laughed, one calling out the window, "Get a car, Grandpa," before speeding away. Clayton paused, leaning slightly on his bicycle for support. His heart medication was in his small backpack, but pride kept him from taking it on a public street. He'd rest a moment, that's all, just long enough to catch his breath. As he stood there, eyes closed against the rain, the first rumble of engines reached him, not the passing cars that had splashed him, but something deeper, more purposeful, the distinctive throaty growl of Harley-Davidson motorcycles, not one but many, approaching from multiple directions. Clayton opened his eyes as the first riders appeared at the intersection ahead. 3 motorcycles, then 5, then a dozen, massive bikes piloted by riders in leather cuts emblazoned with military insignia. They moved with precision, forming a convoy that slowed traffic to a halt. The lead rider, a mountain of a man with a silver beard and weathered face, raised his hand. The entire formation stopped in perfect unison. He dismounted, removing his helmet to reveal a Marine Corps tattoo on his neck. Without hesitation, he strode directly to Clayton. "Staff Sergeant Clayton Jenkins," the man asked. His voice carrying easily despite the rain. Clayton straightened instinctively at the formal address. "Yes," the large man snapped to attention, and rendered a perfect military salute. "Command Sergeant Major Eli Turner, United States Marine Corps, retired, President of the Brothers of Valor Motorcycle Club." Clayton returned the salute automatically, military training overriding confusion. "At ease, yet Staff Sergeant," Turner said, then extended his hand. "We got word one of our own was being disrespected." Clayton's confusion must have shown on his face, because Turner gestured toward the gathering riders, now numbering nearly 30. "Brothers of Valor, we're all veterans, Marines, Army, Navy, Air Force, doesn't matter. Brotherhood doesn't end when the uniform comes off." He pointed toward the Thunder Road. "That place back there, most of those weekend warriors wouldn't know real service if it bit them in the ass. But we do." As Turner spoke, another rider approached, carrying a tarp. With practiced efficiency, he covered Clayton's bicycle, protecting it from the rain. Others formed a loose circle around Clayton, their bodies blocking the wind and weather. "Gunny Thompson recognized you from your force recon tattoo." Turner continued, "Did some check. Word is you saved 5 men at Unlock in '69, that right?" Clayton's eyes widened slightly. He hadn't spoken of Unlock in decades. "Just did what needed doing," Turner nodded, understanding the understatement. "Always the way, isn't it? The real heroes never brag." He turned toward his assembled riders. "Brothers, attention." 30 veteran bikers snapped to attention, rain streaming down their faces. "This is Staff Sergeant Clayton Jenkins. Force Reconnaissance Vietnam." A ripple of recognition passed through the group, and Locke was legendary among those who knew their military history. A brutal series of battles where extraordinary heroism had been commonplace by necessity. Turner continued, his voice carrying over the rain. "Staff Sergeant Briggs earned the Star for Valor under fire, though the paperwork got FUBAR'd like everything else in that war. He carried 5 wounded Marines to safety, while wounded himself." The assembled veterans maintained their position of respect despite the downpour. Turner turned back to Clayton, his voice softer now, meant for one man rather than many. "Sir, it would be our honor to escort you wherever you need to go today." Clayton stared at the assembled riders, momentarily speechless. For decades, he'd lived quietly, asking nothing, expecting nothing. To be recognized, to be honored so publicly after so long. Emotion welled in his throat, making speech impossible. Turner seemed to understand. He placed a large hand on Clayton's shoulder, steadying him. "You never left your brothers behind. We won't leave you behind either." By now the commotion had drawn attention. Pedestrians stopped to watch. Cars slowed, and from the Thunder Road Tavern, patrons emerged. Curious about the motorcycle gathering, the heckler who had harassed Clayton stood in the doorway, mouth slightly open as he watched the scene unfold. The respect being shown to the old man with the bicycle clearly contradicted everything he'd assumed. Turner noticed him and the gathering crowd from the bar. His eyes hardened as he recognized the types who had mocked a veteran. With deliberate steps, he approached the Thunder Road. Clayton's bicycle wheeled respectfully beside him by another veteran. The crowd parted nervously as Turner stopped before the heckler. "This bicycle," Turner said, voice carrying to all listeners, "belongs to a man who earned the right to stop anywhere he damn well pleases in this country." He looked directly at the heckler. "While you were still in diapers, he was saving American lives under enemy fire." The heckler's face flushed, trapped between embarrassment and defensive anger. "How was I supposed to know?" "You weren't," Turner cut him off. "That's the point. You never know who someone is, what they've done, what they've sacrificed. So maybe the right response when seeing an old man with a broken bicycle isn't mockery,
By now dozens of onlookers had gathered, many recording the confrontation on their phone. The heckler, realizing he was being filmed, took a step back toward the bar's entrance. "Whatever, man, it's just a bike," he muttered. Turner shook his head. "No, son, it's never just about the bike, or the car, or whatever. It's about respect, something you might want to learn before you get much older." He turned his back on the heckler, a dismissal more powerful than any further words, and returned to Clayton, who stood surrounded by veteran bikers, each one treating him with the deference. "Do a hero now," Turner said. "About that escort, where are you headed, Staff Sergeant?" "VA clinic," Clayton replied, finding his voice at last. "Got an appointment?" Turner nodded. "Then you'll arrive with an honor guard." He raised his voice. "Mount up, brothers, we're escorting a hero to the V." The rain continued falling, but none of the veterans seemed to notice as they returned to their motorcycles. One rider produced a small American flag, which he affixed to Clayton's bicycle. "Your chariot awaits, Staff Sergeant," Turner said, with a smile, gesturing to a sidecar attached to his own massive Harley. "Your bike will follow safely." As Clayton settled into the sidecar, the engines of 30 motorcycles roared to life in unified tribute. The sound echoed down the street, drawing every eye to the impromptu parade, forming around one humble bicycle and the quiet hero who rode it. If you believe that true honor is never lost, type respect. The escort to the VA clinic was just the beginning of a transformation in Clayton Briggs' life. Word of the incident spread rapidly, first through veteran networks, then through local media, and finally through social media, where videos of the confrontation and subsequent honor guard went viral. The Brothers of Valor Motorcycle Club unanimously voted to make Clayton an honorary member, though he still preferred his bicycle to the thundering Harleys. He accepted their leather vest with quiet pride, wearing it to their monthly meetings, where younger veterans listened intently to his rare stories of Vietnam. Clayton's modest pension had always limited his activities, but the brothers ensured he never missed medical appointments or lacked transportation. More importantly, they provided the camaraderie he'd been missing since losing his last Vietnam-era friends to age and illness. With gentle encouragement from Turner and others, Clayton began volunteering at a local youth center, teaching bicycle repair to children from low-income families. His patient instruction and quiet dignity made him a favorite among kids who had few positive male role models. "He never raises his voice," 12-year-old Miguel explained to a visitor. "Says a man who yells hasn't figured out what he really wants to say yet." The bicycles repaired in Clayton's workshop went to children who couldn't afford them otherwise. Each bike left with a small American flag attached, and basic maintenance lessons from Clayton himself. "Freedom needs maintenance," he would tell each child. That's true for bicycles and countries both. The Thunder Road Tavern underwent its own transformation. The owner, embarrassed by how his patrons had treated a decorated veteran, commissioned a large mural on the building's sidewall. It depicted Clayton with his bicycle, surrounded by a protective formation of motorcycles. The simple caption read, "No brother left behind." The heckler who had confronted Clayton made his own journey. After facing community criticism and some personal reflection, he approached Clayton at the youth center, offering an awkward but sincere apology. "I didn't see you," he admitted. "I just saw an old man with a broken bike." Clayton accepted the apology with characteristic grace. "Most important things in life can't be seen at first glance," he replied. "Takes time and attention to notice what matters." Perhaps the most meaningful change came from the children who witnessed Clayton's quiet example. They observed how he moved through the world, without complaint, without seeking attention, doing what needed doing with whatever tools were available. 10-year-old Sophia expressed it best in a school essay titled, "My Hero." "Mr. Clayton never talks about being brave. He never tells us to respect him. He just fixes bikes and listens when we talk. But my dad says he saved people in the war, and now he saves bikes for kids who need them. He shows us that you don't have to be loud to be important. You just have to be there when someone needs help." On Veterans Day, the town organized its first military appreciation parade in decades. Clayton reluctantly agreed to serve as Grand Marshal, riding his freshly painted Schwinn bicycle at the procession's head. Behind him rode the Brothers of Valor, and behind them marched dozens of children on bicycles. Clayton had repaired. As the parade passed the Thunder Road Tavern, the riders stopped. In a moment of unplanned ceremony, they formed a corridor of honor leading to the mural bearing Clayton's image. Clayton, overwhelmed by the gesture, could only nod his thanks as applause erupted from the crowd. "Sometimes," Turner told a reporter capturing the moment, "it just takes one quiet person standing firm to remind the whole world that honor is never forgotten." For Clayton Briggs, who had spent decades in the shadows of his own sacrifice, that reminder had come full circle. As I've reflected on Clayton's story these past days, I find myself returning to one question. In a world that celebrates noise and spectacle, what power still lies in quiet dignity? Clayton Briggs never sought recognition, never demanded respect, never wore his heroism like a badge demanding acknowledgement. For decades, he simply lived, carrying the memories of war, the pain of wounds both visible and hidden, moving through a society that largely forgot the sacrifices he and his generation made. It would have been easier perhaps to become bitter, to rage against the ingratitude, the disrespect, the casual dismissal of aging veterans. Many do, and who could blame them? Instead, Clayton chose the harder path of quiet dignity, fixing his bicycle when it broke, helping children when he could, asking nothing from a world that had already taken so much from him. I wonder how many Clayton Briggs live among us, unsung heroes, whose greatest acts of courage remain unknown to those they pass on the street. The cashier with combat medals in a drawer at home, the bus driver who once pulled comrades from burning vehicles, the janitor who bears scars from saving others. We pass them every day, these quiet warriors, often without seeing them at all, until someone like Master Sergeant Turner recognizes a brother, and suddenly the invisible becomes visible. What strikes me most about this story isn't the confrontation at the Thunder Road Tavern, or even the dramatic arrival of the Brothers of Valor. It's the moment Clayton stood up from fixing his chain, looked his harasser in the eye without anger or plea, and simply continued his journey. That quiet dignity, the refusal to be diminished by another's scorn, represents a kind of courage we rarely celebrate but desperately need. Have you ever encountered someone whose silent strength commanded your respect? Someone who didn't demand recognition but deserved it completely? Someone whose quiet actions spoke louder than another's shouted claims? They exist in every community, the unassuming heroes who serve without fanfare, sacrifice without acknowledgement, stand firm without seeking applause. They remind us that true character isn't displayed in moments of glory, but in ordinary moments when no one important seems to be watching. In a culture obsessed with fame and noise, perhaps we need Clayton's example more than ever. The reminder that some forms of courage never shout, some forms of strength never flex, some forms of honor need no advertisement. There are heroes without headlines. There are warriors who fight with patience rather than weapons. There are champions whose victories come in moments of quiet dignity, when it would be easier to break. The next time you see an elderly person struggling with a task, a veteran sitting alone, or anyone facing mockery with quiet grace, remember Clayton Briggs. Remember that behind unassuming exteriors often lie extraordinary stories of courage and sacrifice. Subscribe to QH Incredible Stories, where those who deserve remembrance are never forgotten. Type remember if you believe that true honor never grows old. We told their story, you gave it meaning. Thank you. In the quiet hours after the parade, Clayton sat beside his old Schwinn, watching children ride bikes he had once restored. The echoes of engines faded, but the echoes in his heart did not. He never asked to be seen, but now that he was, he carried it humbly, not as a weight, but as a torch. In every act of dignity, he reminded them all that courage isn't loud, it's constant.